up, guys and goddesses? Welcome back to the Lotus Room. I am your host, Doc T, the Woke Professor. I am the founder and CEO of the Carrie Mae Williams Center, creator of the Lotus Room, educator, alchemical healer, and activist. I am an unapologetically Black woman designed to birth and rear a new nation of leaders, thinkers, strivers, and survivors. My mission is to guide others to their true self, to help them reach their highest potential by teaching emotional intelligence and kinetic symbology and basic principles. Because of my mission, obstacles dissipate effortlessly and resources come easily when I connect to my source of creation. Thursday is our day of transcendence in the Lotus Room, where we come together on our weekly meditation and practice the rise pillars of transcendence. Lotus Talks is a platform we created in order to process our revelations as we go through these pillars of transcendence. All right, y'all, it's time to introduce our illustrious panel for the evening. First up, we have Dr. Michelle Stevens, aka Shelly Bell. She is a licensed professional counselor, professor at Middle Tennessee State University, and co-owner of Purposeful Life Counseling, located out in Franklin, Tennessee. Next up, Miss Shonda Cleggett, aka Big Sis. What up, Big Sis? She's an employee for the Metro Nashville Public Schools and also an MA student in marriage and family therapy at Trevecca University. Next up, Mrs. Denise Knowles, also known as the Do-Over Coach, dedicated, unstoppable elevation. She's a life coach and the author of Love Roll Lifetime, now available for sales on her website and via Amazon. Hey, and last but not least, we have Miss I Am Love, the goddess of the 5D, schooling us on how to work in the 3D, philosopher, and my soul sister. Welcome to the Lotus Room, ladies. Hey.
And I just wanna feel your skin.
All right, so tonight we are talking about the second agreement, right? So the second agreement is don't take anything personally. And this one really resonated with me because when I saw it, before I even started reading, I started thinking like about all the different spaces and places I've been in where we as Black people jump to conclusions so fast and fly off the handle when it ain't even how somebody may see it, right? Or what they intended. So that's what we want to get into tonight. So I'm going to begin by reading, it's a few different quotes in here, so I will stop periodically to read the ones that I've highlighted, but I have one that I'm going to begin with, and we're just going to go from there. Tell me what your thoughts are on what Don Miguel Ruiz and his son Jose Ruiz are saying about taking things personally. All right. So, let me take this scarf off. No, never mind. I'm keeping it on because we've already been recording and I might want to keep some of that. All right. So it says, your brain is interpreting everything you perceive according to the meaning you give to every symbol, according to the structure of your language, according to all of the knowledge that was programmed in your mind. Everything you perceive is being filtered through your entire belief system. And the result of interpreting everything you perceive by using everything you believe is your personal dream. This is how you create an entire virtual reality in your mind. Perhaps you can see how easy it is for humans to distort what we perceive. Light reproduces a perfect image of what is real, but we distort the image by creating a story with all those symbols and opinions that we learn. We dream about it with our imagination, and by agreement, we think that our dream is the absolute truth, when the real truth is that our dream is a relative truth, a reflection of the truth that is always going to be distorted by all the knowledge we have stored in our memory. So what are your thoughts on that? I'll go first. So this really resonated with me because I think when I think about myself, I'm gonna start with myself. So when I really started realizing that I was on a spiritual journey and constantly going through these new initiations in my spiritual journey, I started to realize that I tell myself a lot of lies. I tell myself a lot of lies, and I created a lot of stories, and those stories really control my reality. Because, and I think it was because of everything that I had been through. Having had experienced so much trauma in my childhood and not really having any help unpacking it, I created these stories to protect myself, like armor, right? And like, so I drew all these kind of conclusions when I was a child. And I held on to those perceptions of what I went through as a child going into adulthood. And so while the things that I went through were wrong and they were out of my control, at the same time, I was not making room for the people who had hurt me to be able to have a different identity that possibly included growth, possibly included regret for what they had done to me. Or, and so I kind of just like snapped this image of people who had hurt me and I put them in a box, and they had to, you know, answer for that every time we had an exchange, every time we had a conversation. And it wasn't until probably about the age of maybe like 22, 23, when I started really understanding the art of forgiveness and empathy against people who had hurt me. And so, yeah, that virtual reality I was living in as a child, it was something that I created in order to protect myself. And it served its purpose for the time being, but then it was time to put those stories to rest so that I can move forward, because it got to a place to where those stories that I was holding on to, the character that I played in all of those stories was the victim. And by being the victim in those stories, I froze myself in time, and I was not allowing myself to grow, release, and move forward and make room for what it is God really had for me in my new level of growth. So it was really freeing to be able to forgive and practice empathy, and then take like a panoramic view and perspective on that situation from not only what I experienced, but the other side of, you know, what I was going through. So that's all.
For me, now there are so many conscious conversations about the lies that have been poured into you, the lies that you tell yourself. You know, those conversations are pretty much normal conversations now in today's society. For me, it made me reflect back on not knowing what the lie was. And I use the relationship between me and my mother as an example. I know without a doubt that my mother loved me. She loved me. But I also know, due to traumatic events that happened in my mom's life, it affected the way that she loved and taught me and protected me.
Yeah.
Um, my mother was raped by her brother-in-law. And so it was those times when what goes on in this house stays in this house, this, that, and the other. And me as a child, I didn't know that. So when it came to going to that aunt and uncle's house, they happened to be the rich aunt and uncle who had the greatest holidays. Well, my brothers could stay, but I couldn't because my mother would instantly flip and be like, "You're not staying," and I said you wasn't staying. So for me, I felt like I did something wrong because my brothers could stay and I couldn't. The truth was that's the only way that my mom knew how to protect me. But even still, in my head, there was a lie created because my brothers got the treat, but I didn't. So the lie was conjured up in my own mind that I did something bad because I couldn't stay. And in my life, many lies may have been created from that, but if you don't know the distinction between the lie and the truth, you're kind of just floating through whatever comes about. And I don't know about anybody else, but I still have to have these lie and truth conversations internally, even with today. Like I shared with you all, I was in a funk thinking about what happened to somebody else last night, thinking about a project that I'm working on, and now it's coming up as maybe you shouldn't even do this. So, cause who's gonna listen to you? You know, everybody hadn't experienced physical trauma, so how will you relate? You know, the lies, the self-doubt. So that's what this section. I really got into it more than what I thought, but it was just replaying to me that people first have to understand what the lie is, because if you don't know what the lie is, you can't do anything with it. It's still gonna keep playing as if it's normal for me.
Same thing. Like even in my present moment, I'm way more cognizant of like what reality is and like what it is, what the lies are now and what it is that I'm taking personally, but it's still an internal battle that comes. So now the new level is, okay, having an awareness is one thing, but which one you gonna choose? Because one is comfortable and one is unfamiliar. The comfortable one probably ain't all that healthy for you. But the unfamiliar is just too dang on scary to want to step out there because ain't no guarantees. You don't know what's going to happen.
I think one thing that stuck out to me when it talks about perception, and the first thing that came to my mind was that my mother has told me, you can't change people's perception. You can't change how people perceive you, perceive a situation, like you, because that's how they view it. That's how they see it. And so like that was one thing. And then I think in the very first, at the beginning, it talked about how, gave an example of you're going to a movie theater and you're sitting, and the first movie theater you're going to, you're watching, and it's actually you. And you're like, you know, and then the next one was her mother and this, that, and the other. And I've always kind of just sat in my truth as long as I can remember, good, bad, or indifferent. It was just like, you know, heck, hey, this is what it is. This is what I did. This is who I am. And it hasn't been until I've kind of gotten older, I'd say, because I'm 48, so from like maybe 40 on, 35-ish on, that I've become more, I still walk in my truth no matter what it is. I work hard to speak truth, But how most people may have self-doubt, or some people have it along the way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in that like college and that kind of along the way in that smaller time frame, I've just started having self-doubt in like in my 40s. And I'm thinking, well, now, Shonda, that's a little backwards because you've always been this fierce kind of, you know, it is what it is type person. I know I'm the stuff. I'm going to be like, no matter what anybody says about my situation, my life, my lifestyle, or whatever. But it's just since I've gotten older that I'm like, well, now, you know, I don't know, like, you know, Shorty used to like, I don't know if I should do this because, you know, I don't know if it'll work out, or I don't know. So that's like my lie, my inward battle. I battle with myself. I don't think I can recall where I've ever battled with someone else telling me something and me believing it, or me just like taking it in. I battle more so with myself and me talking myself out of stuff, or me telling my own, you know, like the mirror. I'm telling my own self a lie that a part of me don't even believe, but then a part of me is still trying to figure out, well, how can I get out of this kind of a loop?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like man, that's that back and forth with the man. It's but what you're saying about not really internalizing anybody else's perceptions and taking it on. I thought about it in my brain, you know, my wheels just be turning. I started connecting it to agreements. So if you are having an internal battle within yourself where there's a truth and there's a lie, somewhere before you got to that point, you agreed to something. And I'm wondering, where did the agreement come from?
That was my thought too, Shonda. I'm just gonna be honest. Can you guys hear me?
And that's a very good question. And I promise you, when we get off, I probably will, you know, go through the
Right at it.
go through the Rolodex because, you know, I've never been married. I have 3 children. Like, I have no problem telling my story. Never married, 3 children, 3 baby daddies. You know what I'm saying? 20 years to get a undergrad. I've, you know, dated both sexes. Like, I have no problem with telling my story. And I was just telling my daughter the other day, I look back and I think, man, when I was in my 20s, I had people to ask me, well, do you have children? And I'm like, yeah, I have 3 children. And I had some friend girls that would say to me, you tell me you have kids? And I'm looking like, who lies about that? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're mine. I have them. They're a part of me. Why would I lie about that?
And if you're around me, you're gonna see them eventually.
Eventually. So, like, you know, so different things. And even just short of what you saying, the trauma, and, you know, you all saying what you all have gone through, I probably have never categorized anything that I've gone through as trauma. I've never felt like a victim. I've always felt like, well, you know what? I participated in it. Hey, I was blessed and lucky to get out of it. Well, hey, I did it. Well, you know, I could have been in jail or whatever, and I got out of it. But I've never, and I know it sounds weird because I don't think anybody really can truly say it, but I really can't think of anything traumatic. One thing, the death of my father.
Mm-hmm.
When did that happen?
2 weeks before my high school graduation. That's the one only, like, that's a traumatic thing for me. But in relationships, on kind of jobs or anything, I've just always been the one, hey, I'm gonna walk away from it. I can't, like, these are my, you know.
Yeah, I think you just tapped on it right there. If I can say that,
Yeah.
I was thinking that, sometimes we have repressed emotions, right? They may not show up for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. So it could be that the death of your dad, or what we associate to trauma
Mm-hmm.
may not necessarily have a traumatic effect in the fact that it is this mind-blowing, earth-shaking moment in your life. Sometimes wounds, I'll call it that instead of trauma, can
Mm-hmm.
happen so fast on a intellectual and an emotional basis that it automatically makes your fight or flight response kick in. And so if when you're alone, if you could go back to a moment, maybe in your late 30s or your early 40s, where something triggered you to behave differently than you would normally have behaved, that could be the thing that's taking you through that. Now I'm looking at other people's perceptions of me when I never have before. It could be as simple as something somebody said that triggered you, that you didn't even realize it triggered you to the degree that it did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess
And somebody that you
Carla,
care about, because strangers can affect you, but somebody
it,
that you have an emotional
right,
tie to.
and it may just be terminology.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
It
what
may
I was
just be
gonna say.
terminology, because I'm
yeah,
saying I haven't gone through situations, but
yeah.
I don't call it trauma. Like, I went through something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it may just be simple terminology in my mind, that the word itself,
Yeah,
it
doesn't trigger a memory. Yeah,
right, it encompasses a lot. So I don't use, like, I've had a traumatic situation or I've been through trauma. Oh, did this happen? Well, yeah, I did that, or that's happened to me. I don't attach the word to, because I think in my head it's so large. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so large, and most of the time when you hear people, or sometime when you hear people speak and they say, you know, I've been through this trauma, you think like something devastating. So maybe I think it's more terminology for me,
Yeah.
because
Well,
I've been through stuff. I know for a fact that there are things that I've never dealt with, but I probably won't ever say,
It was
you know,
traumatic.
right.
yeah. So acknowledge.
Thank you all.
You welcome. Come
I,
on,
I
Michelle.
Yeah, so I love this conversation. And when you were talking about the terminology, I was looking it up. I'm like, so I think oftentimes we we look at things, we minimize things in a way to sort of protect ourselves. I think that's a way that we internalize it, and then it's a defense mechanism. But the definition of trauma is just a deeply distressing or disturbing event.
yeah.
And so it can, I think it's subjective, and it's broad like that because it is subjective, because based on all of our world views, we're going to experience pain, we're going to experience certain things differently, right? So something that's traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you, and it can be the same event. I mean, we see that in society right now, right? There are things in that are traumatic to the Black community that are not traumatic to other communities. And it's the same thing. It's our view, it's, our worldview, it's where, the perspective that we're in, I think all of that. And so thank you for really like bringing that up, because I think that even so, even though we may not necessarily internalize, I think this is kind of piggybacking on what I am was talking about. We may not internalize the trauma or the things that happen to us, but they still have an imprint on us. They're still there. We know that trauma changes the shape of our brain. We know that trauma it changes everything in us. It has a physical imprint,
And so even if we don't remember, our body does and our
Yeah.
brain does, right? And so yeah, it's that's a very interesting. And I think when I think back on it, I think the idea of being strong also. So I'm a single mom, have 3 kids, right? Been married, been divorced, um, had got a PhD by the age of 30. Had right, but it was hard. And people ask me like, how'd you do that? I just like closed my eyes and did it. You know what I mean? So there was it was I know looking back on it, I can say, man, that was some of the hardest stuff I've ever done in my life. And I know I remember looking back and thinking about I cried some nights all night. Because I did a lot of it by myself. And a lot of those things in the moment, I wouldn't have said I was being traumatized. It wasn't trauma. But now I can look back and be like, that was some traumatic mess, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
reflectively, when we step back from things, we're able to look at it and say, because it had an imprint on me. And some of it, for me, it built not necessarily character, but there are certain things, there are lessons that came from some of the things that I had to endure and participated in, because it was a choice for me to get a PhD. It was a choice for me, so a lot of those things I was an active participant in, but it was still traumatic.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We're all, active participants, whether we want to be or not sometimes, we're still a part of it. And for me, are you done, Michelle? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Okay. For me, when it comes to taking things personal and my perceptions of how people are viewing me, I, like Shonda, have never really cared about somebody else's opinion. But with my wounding or my traumatic experiences in my life, um, I started to go to the extreme of just not caring what people think about me. Like I never digressed to, oh, now I really care what you think about me and I'm going to sit in the house and cry about it. It was like, dude, what? Like, I don't care, to the point of I'm going to do what I want to do. And if it hurts you, it hurts you, which was not good either. Right? Because
Right. Yes.
being an empath, everything that I do to somebody, I feel it. I probably feel it stronger than they feel it. So for me, I had a time in my life, very brief, thank God, but I went through that time where I was like, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. This is my life. I have to answer for it at some point, but you don't get to dictate to me who I am. But then I realized that, there are two things that I believe are really important and are a part of who we are because they protect us, and that's the ego, right? It can be healthy or unhealthy. And then it's that fight or flight response. It's a natural response to protect ourselves. And so my ego was way overboard. Like, I am so secure in who I am that I don't care what you think. But with being secure in who I am, I have learned that.
And we're back.
That's a
So I
lot.
am. You were saying you were like hyper security. You were talking about hyper security.
Yeah, and while I um, didn't really acknowledge a lot of people's perceptions, and so um, because they had one, that's what I was responding to. That not just that they had, a perception of me, but they had the audacity to voice it to me. And so my fight response was, shh, like it was really over the top. And so I had to bring that back in and realize, why am I being so assertive about the fact that I don't care about what they say or how they think about me? Because I could have just very well said, okay, and just not responded. But
Mm-hmm.
because they brought it to me, I felt the need to respond. And so I do a lot of self-work, and especially in meditation, those are the moments that I probably cry the most because I see myself so much clearer when I'm in that meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
And like I realized the wound for myself and when it happened and why I was behaving the way I was behaving. So I think just learning to watch out for my ego and paying attention to my thoughts. I believe in what's called capturing our thoughts. So any thought that comes into my mind that I see as being negative, I usually, not all the time, but I usually change it to something positive. Like I'll speak the opposite to make that true, or I'll think the opposite. Yeah, so I like to be in that opposite energy. But yeah, I totally get it. And as always, I can relate to pretty much everybody's story too,
You know,
because our journeys are so long.
one of the things that you said, you were talking about the fight or flight response. The other response that kind of goes in with that is the freeze. So
Yeah,
sometimes,
I never do that.
right? I do. I think,
It's one or the fight or the flight. Like,
right?
I freeze.
terrible.
Yeah,
Do you?
yeah. I freeze. There'll be times where I'll just go numb, and that
Mm,
I can't. There's nothing I can do. I can't move. I can't. I'm just numb.
that's
And
the Aries.
yeah,
That's
probably.
you trying to protect them from you. Because you know once your fire come,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
That too. Yeah, that's so true. Oh man.
Yeah.
the
I believe
bull,
Okay.
yeah.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Michelle just said. Um, I don't know if it's possible for anybody else, but um, when I got bit by the pit bull, I actually did both. It was fight or flight. My brain did what it needed to do to protect me, but my physicality stopped. And so it was extreme both ways because physically I couldn't do anything. Even once the dog was detached from me, the body stopped. I couldn't move. But my brain was working fight or flight to protect me from the pain or whatever. So that was a very different type of feeling. Uh, and I guess some of it was not known to me until after the fact when I had a conversation with my husband because things that I thought took place didn't take place.
Mm.
That's
So to be in two different avenues, but it's functioning
yeah.
from one brain, um, is a different type of feeling, I suppose.
Yeah. Denise,
So
I could definitely relate to that because when I think about some childhood things that I went through and it was out of my control physically, right? So I was being forced to endure some things physically that I just couldn't get out of. And then, so it's like so my body froze, but my brain was going full speed ahead, just telling me all of these things to protect myself in the moment. And I can remember doing that on so many different occasions into where now, even as an adult, I experienced some things where it was just like, okay, in the moment I froze, I wasn't doing or saying anything because I did not want to unleash my full wrath and have to deal with those consequences. But so I just kind of just took it, and in my mind it's, it's doing what it needs to do to protect me. But then later when I get into a different experience, I'm now triggered
because it feels familiar, even though it's not the same thing. So I find myself often a lot, in particularly in professional environments, when I'm having to have a confrontation of some sort with a person of authority in a professional environment. When I'm triggered, I have to explain to them in the moment, like, I'm being triggered right now, and my body is physically responding to something that happened to me, a long time ago. But I understand mentally right now in this moment it's not the same thing, but I kind of just need to let my body do what it's going to do right now in order to work through this thing. And ooh,
Can I put a
That
clinical
felt
term?
good, didn't it?
yes, please, what's the clinical term for it?
No, it's called dissociation. So we dissociate.
Okay. Yeah.
So we
Okay.
dissociate to protect ourselves, right? That's where the freeze comes. Your body is there. A lot of traumatic events, that's what that is a response to trauma, right? It is all of the things. It's your ego. It's all of the different parts of you protecting you, right? The body. And so that's dissociation. And when you were talking about, you know, basically you were talking about integration, right? When you have to talk yourself and you're saying, you know, I am being triggered right now. This feels familiar, but I know that I'm here. I'm in the right here in the right now. That's integration, right? And so we dissociate, and a lot of times we don't even know that we're doing it. So Denise, when you're talking about that, and you're talking about being somewhere else and your brain kind of going, your body did that. Your conscious, everything separated in order to protect you, right? And because, like I was talking about before, the imprint that trauma has on us, it affects all of it. And so those triggers that come back now, those are familiar experiences, because it's still, your brain is still saying, hey, this is happening, this is happening. And in order to be reintegrate, we have to ground ourselves, right? So doing a lot of grounding things, the meditation that you're talking about, I am, and the cognitive restructuring, which you were, what did you call it? Capturing?
Oh, capturing my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
Thought
So
capturing. Yeah.
in other places, it's called cognitive restructuring. So you're just restructuring the thoughts, and
Yeah.
even if you make
Rephrasing. Yeah.
right, it's just bringing you back to the right now, the here and right now.
Yep, and to piggyback off of Michelle, and when the trauma is so extreme and the disassociation happens, it leads to split personalities. So then you have a whole nother dynamic working there, because you now, not only are you integrating the emotions, but now you're integrating a personality to the main personality. And I've done a lot of that work too with people and even myself from trauma. So yeah, that's rough. But this is related but unrelated. Did we lose Shonda? Is she here?
She back.
She's there.
Oh, okay.
She's there.
She's quiet.
I'm listening.
Okay. So that also happens with, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Did
you're
I
fine.
miss
I was
something?
just saying, this is some good
Okay.
stuff. Keep going.
It also happens with sexual abuse, right? And the spiritual component of that is disassociation. Like, for example, everybody we have sex with, there is a soul tie that's created, right? And I call it soul disassociation, because every time you sleep with somebody, you give a part of yourself away. And if you've had a lot of partners, there needs to be an integration to bring you back, to bring those parts of your soul back, or you can't perform and you can't function in your gifts. You can't function in your purpose. Like if you find that you have a relationship with somebody, and then on the back of that relationship you're behaving like this person, more like them than you, then there's been a soul transference, a soul disassociation. So it's interesting how incredible the human body is, because we have all these different aspects to us, and to be completely healed, completely whole, we have to make sure we're integrating all those pieces. So I don't know, I just like this conversation a lot.
I love this conversation right now. Like my solar plexus and my heart chakras just like boop, 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 boop. So much gratitude in this moment. Okay, so so let's go back to, because Shauna, you were talking about it, the part of the chapter where he was giving the example of how we are all viewing the same story from a different perspective. And he used the analogy of being in a movie theater and going into different theaters and seeing the same story of your life from the perspective of you, your mom, your sister, and all these other people. And understanding from that, like getting a revelation just about, it's not all about you and what you think. It's not all about you. Like that resonates with me so much when I think about my relationship with my mother and I, because I took her through the ringer. I judged my mama so much for things that happened in our childhood, and now I feel bad. I feel bad talking about it right now in this moment, but we have like I feel like the strongest relationship that I have in my life is the one with my mom, because it has really seen like extremely low depths, and we worked our way out of that, having real conversations, allowing space for us to grow and think about things, and then come back and then having more conversations and recalibrating that connection. And it couldn't happen until I made a conscious decision to say, I forgive you, and then begins to think about her side. What could she have possibly gone through to have her be programmed in such a way for the things that transpired to transpire? When I began to ask those questions and think about, and Shauna, I've even had some of these conversations with you. You have helped me through some of these conversations with my mom, like helped me see some things I was like, that I would have never saw on my own, because I'm not a parent, like I'm not a mom. So I think your perspective of being a mother who has raised children and knowing like at some point you're not gonna get everything right. And that ain't no good feeling.
That's not how that works.
And like for me, I'm a perfectionist. So imagine me looking at my mama like, you this, you this, you, just all the time. And it was just like, at some point, my soul was like, you gotta chill. You gotta chill. She is a human being, and she did the best that she could do. She loved you. She had good intentions from the very beginning. If she didn't have good intentions, she wouldn't still be here giving what she has to you. And for that, like, whenever the revelation comes, I call her or I text her and I let her know, like, I appreciate you for this. I was thinking about this today, and it gave me this revelation about how, it was on your side of things, and thinking about that and seeing that perspective. I just want to let you know that I appreciate you for this, and and it has really healed us to a point to like, now I be like, what you doing, girl? Or we have a conversation and that Sag in her starts shooting them arrows, and she just full speed ahead with that fire, and I'm just like, whoa, hold on, ma'am. Hold on. We gotta bring you back in, mama. You was doing good. Cause my mama, she's from the south side of Chicago, and she was in the Marine Corps. So
I can relate. Mine's a
grew
sad.
up on the low end. Like my mama don't like. She been through like certified savage, and I don't know how in the world I came out. Cause I'm like the total opposite. But just reading that whole section, that's what I got from that. So what concepts did that whole section trigger for you when you were reading the chapter?
It triggered for me finally being able to see me through my own eyes. Because all my life I saw me through everybody else's eyes. Being the youngest of three, the only girl, but for some strange reason, I got that label across my forehead that I'm the one. I'm the strong one. I'm the caretaker, and I had no choice in it. I felt I didn't have any choice in it because the first age that I remember becoming a caretaker, I was 8 years old. 8. And when I say caretaker, I mean living in Dixon County, driving my mom to Nashville to Baptist Hospital through the ER because she was in such pain. She needed pain meds, her drug of choice. 8 years old.
You was driving
a car on the interstate. Either I would drive to the hospital and my brother would drive back, or he would drive to the hospital and I would drive back. Now, when you raised in the country, driving that early is not strange. You could drive around your little counties. But I was having to take care of my mom because she's sick, as my grandparents would say, driving on the interstate because she needed to be seen through the ER. So the first half of my life was lived through the projection of other people, what they put upon a kid. Missing basketball games because why? This is your mama. That basketball ain't gonna do you no good. This your mama. You need to take care of her. Again, I don't know how things were when you're born and raised in the city, but in the country, that family we take care of each other. And my title was because you're the girl. You need to know how to take care of. So automatically, what's attached to my identity? Taking care of people. So this section of the book was almost like a breath of fresh air for me because I do now look at Denise through Denise's eyes, because I've learned that that's truly the foundation of what other people see is how you see yourself, because that's what you project out, is what you see in yourself. People might have their perceptions, but what you give off is your authentic self. And being able to see me and understanding that I really do love being a caretaker. I love that, but I have boundaries. That's what I didn't have at first, is whatever I was assigned to do, then I do it. So it went from taking care of my mom, making sure my brothers was good. I was the youngest, but I always looked out for my brothers. Then when you get a little bit older, you fall in love. Now I'm taking care of my boo. Now I'm pregnant. Now I'm taking care of my boo and my baby. So, just being able to look at who I am, what makes me tick, what feels good to me, what doesn't feel so good to me, and being able to stand strong in it and making my decision. One of the biggest experiences that I had as an adult, even after 3 kids and a divorce, one of the biggest decisions that I made was to marry my husband, because I had everybody saying, no, you shouldn't do that. You're doing good. It's just you and your kids. It ain't nothing wrong with you being by yourself and blah, blah, blah. But I had to stand strong, because the people that were saying that, they truly loved me, but they were fearful for me in that decision. And they truly believed, you ain't know him long enough. You didn't. But something in me seeing me knowing what I was feeling, I stood strong in it. And it felt good. And that was very much adulthood of myself making a decision that I made, wholeheartedly me. There were entities that played a part. Of course, the way he treated me, the way he treated my children, those played a part, but the bottom line decision came from me, and it felt good. That's all I got.
I resonate with all of that. I resonate with all of that, but as like the older sibling, I had to be like 6 or 7. My oldest, okay, so I have been taking care of people since about the age of 6 or 7. I think I'm probably 6 years older than my first cousin. And I remember, I be trying not to throw people under the bus, but I remember it being late and waking up out of my sleep to fix the baby bottle, make sure his diapers was changed. And this continued when his little brother came, and it continued when his second brother came. And so by this time, I'm 6th, 7th grade, 5th grade, cleaning up, cooking, making sure the kids ain't tearing down the house. You know, I was like, and then I ended up becoming the mama on the block, which then translated into being a mama in my relationships, was then translated to being a mama in the classroom, and so on and so forth. And now, in the ripe age of 31, I am unlearning all of this. Like, I love being a nurturer. I know that a key part of who I am is nurturing something. Like, I literally have to have something to nurture at some point. That's why I like doing plants. That's why I like cooking, all these different things to channel that energy. But not having those boundaries, like you said, because you're young and this is all you ever knew. And you just think that this is the way that it is, and it's a badge of honor for so long, and then unlearning that, and then really having to sit with yourself and be like, okay, what do you like, what you don't like? I am so very still new in that process that even articulating it verbally is still, there are still some blockages there. And I think that has a lot that's to do with where I am and being able to relate to men and have the type of relationship that I want to have. And it's so frustrating.
But I think,
I want to pass the damn test. So I can
but again, it comes when you're put in situations at such a young age, you're comfortable with it because it feels normal. Mm-hmm. So when you make it to a different level and you grow and you mature and you have conversations like this, like you said, even speaking it still feels out of order. It feels like you're throwing somebody under the bus, but the reality is, this is your story. You're not throwing anybody under the bus. You're speaking your experience. But because there are so many perceptions of us speaking our true stories that we're hesitant because other people might feel like, oh, she's talking about me or she's talking about such and such, but you're not talking about the other person. You're talking about you in the situation and how it makes you feel. Because I do that. Even in my mom being deceased, she still, her story continues to teach me today. Her trauma continues to teach me today, and it gives me a broader understanding of me.
Who?
So, so I'm a like backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So I care what my children think about me to a certain point. So as you were speaking, Shorter, about how, you know, you gave your mother the blues, this, that, and the other, flip it for me. I'm heavy on myself. I'm down on myself. So as my children are grown and we've had conversations, I'm like, man, I was a horrible parent, right? I was young. Man, you know, if it wasn't for your granny, your auntie, I ain't gonna lie, I don't know where y'all might be. Like, you know, but as I got older, I got better. You know, Shorter's like my mother. My mother's very strong head, like it's her way or no way. So no matter what the situation, she's gonna kind of take it over. And I'm like, man, you know, I didn't learn how to be a parent until as I got older. And I'm like, hey y'all, I apologize. I'm sorry, you know. And I've continued to say that through the years. Now my children are 30, 28, and 24. Through the years, their response has been, what are you talking about? Like, you're good. You're fine. You wasn't that bad. You know what I'm saying? But how I saw myself, or even still now, like for back then, I was horrible. Like, horrible. So when I'm looking at my movie, or when I'm sitting watching my kids watch my movie, they're looking at it and it's like, oh man, you know, that's my mama. You wasn't that bad. I'm looking at it like, are you serious? That's horrible right there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I'm well aware the perception comes into play. That it's very important how they see me. It's very important how they saw me as a young parent when they were children. And for me, acknowledging that to them without them even saying, man, mama, why did you do this? Or why did we go through this? Just off the bat, I hope that has helped them. Mm-hmm. And they understand why I see myself how I see myself, if that kind of makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Do you, what's the question?
I don't know.
Like, I'm wondering, because you know the woman.
Just ask it.
No, that's what I'm saying. You know the woman that you've evolved into now. So do you see the growth from that and see that woman, or do you continuously see the woman that it was that takes you back to the repeated apology? Because I did the exact.
Well, yeah, 10 minutes.
I did the same thing for my children, because I made some horrific choices in me, and that's what I was good at. And that's why people were so afraid for me when I decided to marry D, because I was really, really good at picking the wrong one. And so for me to feel like I have a clean slate, I went to each one of my children that were older. And I apologize for the choices that I made. Now, I have one daughter and I have 3 sons. Of course, my 12-year-old, he wasn't up and about then. He came after my marriage. But my daughter still has angry moments toward me right now today. My boys, my daughter's picture is painted completely different than both of my boys. It's like 2 different households that they were raised in. And so I used to do repeated apologies, but then I had to think, if I keep apologizing, then that devalues truly the apology. And so when I stood firm in saying, I cannot change who I was then, I can only be who I am now. If any pain I brought to your hearts, I apologize. The same conversation with all of them. And my boys did like your children did, and they were like, what exactly are you talking about? Like, huh? Whereas my daughter, depending on what's going on with she and I, it might be, well, yeah, Ma, I understand, or it might be, now my judgment in men is terrible in this. So that's why my question was, do you see yourself repeatedly apologizing, or do you see yourself that the woman that you've evolved into, and you're good with yourself?
I don't do repeated apologies. I did each one separately, had conversations with each separately, very in depth, because I'm a very honest person when it even comes to my children. I do see the growth from who I was to where I am, and I also am very intentional in continued growth, right?
Yes.
Now, we all know you gonna have that 1 or 2 family members, okay, that no matter how you've grown, ever so often in conversation, they go throw something out there. And that has happened to me in front of my oldest daughter. And I had to tell that family member outright, there's nothing you can say about me that I've not admitted, owned up to, acknowledged, apologized, and moved on from. So what you're dating is really just for your purpose. It's my oldest daughter, who really, she stayed in the thick of everything with me. My oldest son and my youngest daughter, they always ran my mother. But she's in the thick. No matter what it was, no matter how it looked like, she was like, I'm your ride or die. I'm not going. I don't want to go up there. But it was in front of her. And her thing was like, my mama good. So it hasn't been me or even my children, but ever so often, like that one family member, or throw something. And I'm like, and sometimes I'll be petty. And I'll start a conversation off by saying, hey, I've grown. I already know I was a piss poor parent, but I'm much better and have been. So now what we talking about? And it just kind of like, well, dang. Okay, well, I can't shoot that bullet at her because she just put it out there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's not who I am. And I've made amends. We're good. Like, we're all good. And it gets to a point where when it does happen, I don't get offended. My children get offended.
Which makes the problem happen to you, because they're still your children, and you're not going to allow anybody to put them in a situation that's uncomfortable for them.
But yeah, I definitely see my growth, like, but that is still a part of my story.
Yes.
Well, so when you're
Yeah.
talking about some of the things so acknowledging how you've grown, I think one of the things that's important, it's easy for us to have empathy for others. It's also important for us to have empathy for us, for
Yes.
ourselves, right?
Mhm.
For me, like that was my story. That was what I told myself, that I did a horrible job at picking men. I always said that, right? There was a reason, not an excuse. There was a reason for me picking the men that I did, and I'm placing judgment on it, right? It To me, I was a bad person. That I picked the wrong. I did a really piss poor job of this and that. So I'm placing that judgment on it. But the radical acceptance part of it is it was for a reason, right?
Mhm.
There was a reason why I was making those. And so sometimes, like for me, I try to be as empathic to past Michelle as I can. I will say, hey, because I used to cuss 19-year-old Michelle out. I used to cuss like 20. I'd be like, girl, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you did that. And now I'm like, you know what? You didn't know 19-year-old Michelle. And now that 42-year-old Michelle knows, I'm going to honor that. I'm going to honor all of the lessons, all of the things that you had to, go through. So that's part of empathy, really understanding that there are reasons why we did the things that we did. Not excuses, but reasons.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
agreed. Yeah.
All right, y'all. We got 3 minutes and 16 seconds. So, what are our final words for the second agreement?
My final words for the second agreement is take your time and have a clear view of yourself.
I think mine comes from the actual a piece in the chapter that says it's your story. You change your story because it's your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I agree. The word that I'm getting right now is just acceptance. Radical acceptance, not placing judgment on what it is and what isn't, just it is. And being able to just sit in it and be, you know, it's a vulnerable position to be in, but it's freeing as well.
I am.
I'm still guilty of not reading the chapter, so I'm sitting here going, I can't really speak about it, but I can say based on our conversations, I think my takeaway is, or if somebody else hears this later, encourage people to do their work, because I think after every chapter, we're probably going to be looking at the work we've done and the work that we still need to do. And so I hope that I get to work with this group and walk through some things that Tasia and I have talked about,
Yeah.
because I think it's going to make a really positive impact on where we go after this. So I would just say do the work, do your internal work. It's so beneficial. However that looks for people, because we probably all have done different things to get to where we are today. Yeah.
All right, y'all. We got less than a minute. It has been this is officially episode 2 of season 1 of the Lotus Talks. And it has been amazing. I love y'all. I like y'all. And I look forward to taking this journey with y'all. Y'all have a
I like you
wonderful evening,
too.
my sisters.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye-bye.
You guys have a good night.
Once again, thank you so much for stopping by the Lotus Room. And as we always say, we love you, we like you, and we look forward to taking this journey with you. Bye-bye.